He killed his wife. Then he sealed her body inside a giant fertilizer tank on his own farm, and lived just 50 feet away for over 3 years like nothing ever happened. Every single morning he woke up, made his coffee, walked outside and looked out across his property, knowing exactly what was sitting in that tank. No one was looking for a body. No one even knew there was a crime. The police had nothing. Her family had nothing. And Dale Warner? He just kept farming. But here's what makes this case truly terrifying: it almost worked. For 3 years, 4 months and 16 days, Dee Warner was sealed inside that metal tank. No funeral. No grave. No goodbye. Just cold steel and silence, while her husband told anyone who asked that she probably just walked away from a bad marriage. And the worst part? People believed him. Until the day investigators cut that tank open. And everything Dale Warner had carefully built came crashing down in a single moment. I'm going to take you through every single detail of this case, from the night Dee disappeared, to the surveillance footage that exposed Dale's secret, to the moment a jury looked him in the eyes and said, guilty. Because Dee Warner deserved so much more than what she got. And her story deserves to be told completely. Stay with me, because this case gets darker with every single layer we pull back. Act 1. Who was Dee Warner? Dee Warner was 52 years old. A mother of 5. Co-owner of a transportation and farming business in Lenawee County, Michigan. A woman who everyone who knew her described the exact same way: direct, energetic, and someone who did not back down from anything or anyone. She wasn't a quiet person. She wasn't the type of woman who silently accepts injustice. Something was wrong, she said it. If something needed to change, she changed it. That's how her friends remembered her. Her colleagues. Her children. She married Dale Warner in 2006. At first everything looked fine: a shared business, a farm, a big blended family. They were building something serious together. On paper it looked like a success story. But over time the picture started to shift. Dale became increasingly controlling, especially when it came to money in the business. People close to Dee noticed the pattern. She had less and less control over her own finances, her own decisions, her own life. For a woman with her personality, that was unbearable. By 2020 and 2021, her mind was made up. Dee was openly talking about divorce. She was consulting with attorneys. She was gathering documents. She was ready to take her fair share of everything they had built together over 15 years. And that, right there, is the key to everything that happened next. Because Dale Warner understood exactly what divorce meant. Half the business, half the farm, half of everything. For a man with his psychology of control, that was a catastrophe. That was unacceptable. And while Dee was planning her new beginning, Dale was planning something else entirely. Act 2. The night Dee vanished. April 25, 2021. A Sunday. Dee had been preparing for a conversation she had been putting off long enough. That evening she was going to tell Dale clearly and directly, it's over. The marriage is done. Final. She arranged for one of her daughters to spend the night at a friend's house. She didn't want her kids around for what was going to be a difficult confrontation. At 10:54 p.m., Dee sent a text message to a friend. One letter, K. Just confirming she'd received the previous message. After that, complete silence. No calls. No texts. No credit card transactions. No social media activity. Nothing at all. The next morning, Dale called police and reported that his wife had left him. He said he had gone out early to work on the farm, and when he came back she was just gone. Left on her own. Just walked away. But when investigators arrived at the property, the story fell apart immediately. Both of Dee's cars were still parked in the driveway. Both of them. Her purse was still in the house. Her phone was still there. All of her personal belongings, everything a person takes when they decide to leave forever, were sitting exactly where they should be. Untouched. The only thing missing was her wedding ring. And investigators found it sitting neatly on Dale's desk. Stop for a second and think about that. A woman decides to leave her husband. She walks out with no car, no purse, no phone, no money. But she takes the time to remove her ring and place it on his desk. Neatly. Deliberately. That's not how someone leaves a marriage. That's how someone stages a scene. Dee's family didn't need investigators to tell them something was wrong. Her daughter Raquel and son Zach knew immediately. Her brother Greg Hardy dropped everything, work, plans, everything, and drove straight to Michigan. When they walked through the house they noticed things. Used tissues on the couch. Some of Dee's makeup was missing but not packed. Just gone. The whole house had a feeling that something had happened there, even without any single obvious piece of evidence pointing directly at it. Greg later described it like this: you walk in and you just know. You can't point to one specific thing and say that's the proof. But the feeling is completely undeniable. Dale, meanwhile, kept giving police new versions of events. First she had an argument and walked out. Then maybe she met someone new. Then maybe she just needed space. On officers' body camera footage he appears calm, almost too calm, with ready explanations for every question. And during a walkthrough of the property, he steered officers away from one of the barns. Said they couldn't go in because of chemicals. It sounded reasonable: a farm, fertilizer, hazardous materials. Nothing suspicious. But investigators remembered that moment. And they remembered it for years. Act 3, 3 years of silence. This is where the story becomes almost unbearable to think about. 3 years. 3 full years and nothing happened. No arrest. No body. No answers. Just a missing woman and a husband who kept living on the same farm, waking up every morning and doing his work. Dee's family existed in a suspended nightmare. They knew Dale was responsible. They were completely certain of it. But certainty and proof are two entirely different things. And without a body, without physical evidence, without confirmation that a crime had even been committed, investigators had almost nothing to move on. This is called a no-body murder case. And they are among the most difficult cases to prosecute in the entire legal system. Defense attorneys love them. Prosecutors dread them. Because without remains, without an established cause of death, without direct physical proof that a murder even occurred, you're fighting with both hands tied behind your back. Dale Warner understood this. Consciously or by instinct, he understood that as long as Dee's remains stayed hidden, he was protected. The story could remain exactly what he had told police: she left. Unhappy marriage, unhappy wife, just left. It happens. And so he kept living on that farm. 15 meters from where he had hidden his wife's body. The family refused to give up. They hired a private investigator. They kept talking to the press. They kept pressure on law enforcement. Greg Hardy in particular became a relentless public voice, showing up everywhere he could, talking about Dee, refusing to let the case quietly disappear into a file somewhere the way Dale might have hoped. But without that one critical piece of evidence, justice remained agonizingly out of reach. That lasted until August 2024. Happens. Act 4, The Tank. August 2024. More than 3 years after Dee vanished. Investigators executed a search warrant on a second property owned by Dale Warner, a separate parcel of land on Paragon Road, away from the main farm. Inside a storage building on that property, they found a large anhydrous ammonia tank, a substance widely used in agricultural fertilizers. On the side of the tank, someone had written by hand, "Out of service," and "Do not fill." By itself that wasn't unusual. Farms have old equipment taken out of rotation all the time. Signs get put up. Tanks sit for years. But investigators looked more closely. The welds on the tank were new. Fresh. Recent. On a tank that was supposedly long out of service. They brought in equipment to cut it open. What they found inside changed everything. Human remains. Carefully wrapped in blue tarps. Sealed with duct tape. At the bottom of the tank there was a small residual amount of anhydrous ammonia, one of the most corrosive substances legally stored on farms. DNA analysis and dental records confirmed the identity. It was Dee Warner. She had been in that tank for over 3 years. Hidden in plain sight on a property owned by her husband, sealed inside a piece of farm equipment, marked "out of service," as if she were just another broken machine waiting to be dealt with eventually. The autopsy determined the cause of death was strangulation combined with blunt force trauma. She had been murdered in her own home on the night of April 25, 2021. And then her husband had sealed her inside that tank, moved it to the second property, welded it shut, written a note by hand and gone back to his life. When the family received the news, Greg Hardy described it as simultaneously the worst moment and the only moment of relief they had felt in 3.5 years. Because now they knew. Not knowing had been its own form of torture. And now, finally, they could fight for Dee for real. Act 5, The Evidence. Finding Dee's remains was devastating. But for prosecutors, it was also the beginning of building a case that Dale Warner could not escape. And the evidence they uncovered was staggering. The surveillance footage. Dale Warner's farm had cameras. His own cameras. And they had been recording everything. In the days immediately after Dee's disappearance, while Dale was telling police that his wife had simply walked out, the cameras were capturing something completely different. They captured Dale operating heavy equipment. A loader. A forklift. Moving directly toward the area where the tank was located. They captured him carrying welding equipment. And later, when police mentioned they might be bringing in cadaver dogs to search the property, the cameras showed Dale moving the tank. Physically relocating it to a different spot on the property. Think about what that means. The moment he heard the words cadaver dogs, he immediately moved the tank. The digital evidence. When investigators went through Dale's devices, they found search history that told its own story. He had searched for how long a body takes to decompose in anhydrous ammonia. He had searched for how to properly seal a large metal tank. These searches appeared in the time frames surrounding Dee's disappearance. The physical evidence. Welding experts who examined the tank testified that the seals were fresh and had been applied with skill. This was not rushed amateur work. It was careful, deliberate work from someone who knew exactly what they were doing. Dale Warner had burns on his hands consistent with welding work, burns with no other explanation. The full picture. Prosecutors didn't present one single smoking gun. They presented something more powerful, a complete picture. A controlling husband. A wife demanding divorce. A disappearance with no goodbye, no packed bags, no car taken. Surveillance footage of him moving toward the exact location of the hidden body. Digital searches about decomposition and sealing tanks. Fresh welds on an out-of-service container. Burns on his hands. And his wife's body sealed inside his own tank on his own property. Piece by piece, the case Dale Warner thought he had made completely airtight turned out to have one fatal flaw. He left a record of everything he did. Act 6, The Verdict. February 2026. Lenawee County Circuit Court. 13 days of testimony. More than 30 witnesses. Weeks of evidence laid out before a jury asked to look at the complete picture of what had happened on that farm. The courtroom heard from investigators who described the moment they cut open that tank. From forensic experts who explained the cause of death, the condition of the remains, the timeline of events. From digital forensic specialists who walked through Dale's search history query by query. They heard from Greg Hardy, Dee's brother, who testified with the kind of raw emotion that comes from 3.5 years of fighting for someone you love while not knowing whether justice will ever come. He talked about Dee, who she was, how she lived, how she loved her children. He talked about the long years of not knowing. He talked about what it felt like to finally have an answer, even an answer as devastating as the one they got. Dee's children testified. They shared memories of their mother, the woman she was before April 25, 2021, and the years of absence that followed. Dale Warner chose not to take the stand in his own defense. His attorneys argued what defense attorneys in cases like this always argue, that the evidence was circumstantial, that the state had not proven its case beyond a reasonable doubt. But the jury had sat through 13 days of testimony and seen everything the prosecution had built. They had seen the whole picture. After 9 hours of deliberation spread across 2 days, on March 10, 2026, the jury returned their verdict. Guilty of second-degree murder. Guilty of tampering with evidence. The courtroom went still as the verdict was read. Dale Warner sat at the defense table staring at the floor, slowly shaking his head as the words settled over him. For Dee's family sitting just yards away, it was the moment they had been fighting toward for nearly 5 years. Sentencing is scheduled for May 7, 2026. Closing. Dee Warner was 52 years old, a mother of 5, a businesswoman, a sister, a daughter, a friend, a woman who decided she deserved better, and was in the process of building a new life for herself when that life was taken from her. She spent 3 years, 4 months, and 16 days sealed inside a metal tank on a farm she had helped build. And the man who put her there lived 50 feet away and told everyone who asked that she had just walked away. This case proves one thing clearly and without question. Evidence survives even when a killer thinks he has buried it forever. Surveillance footage doesn't lie. Digital trails don't disappear. And a family that refuses to give up can be the difference between a case that goes cold and a case that makes it to a courtroom. Dale Warner thought he had committed the perfect crime. He used everything he knew about farming, about chemicals, about equipment. He used every resource available to him to make Dee disappear. And for 3 years it worked. But not forever. It never does. Rest in peace, Dee Warner. You deserved so much more. And your family never once let the world forget you. If this case stayed with you the way it stayed with me, hit that like button, drop a comment below telling me which moment hit you hardest. Was it the tank? The surveillance footage? The search history? Subscribe and turn on notifications. Every week I'm bringing you a real case told completely with every detail you need.